Hello and welcome to the 360 Podcast. Fascinating conversations with interesting people. I'm your host, Tim Braheem, and today's interview and discussion is with Josh Mettle from Neo Home Loans. Josh is an industry-leading author, mortgage originator, ranking him in the top 1% of mortgage originators in 2020, according to Mortgage Executive magazine. Josh is also a fourth-generation real estate investor, and along with his mother, they own a number of rental properties, apartment buildings, and commercial buildings. So he brings a breadth of wisdom, a full scope of wisdom as it relates to mortgage finance. Josh currently serves as a division president and director of physician lending at Neo Home Loans, which is affiliated with Celebrity Home Loans. He has a passion for empowering home buyers with financial literacy and guiding them on their journey to financial freedom. My personal experience with Josh has encompassed about 4.5 years now, where I've been his coach, so I've gotten to know him quite well. He's an incredibly positive and incredibly self-motivated individual. I think that you're going to really experience that in the course of our discussion, seeing how he gets up every morning and really takes the day with his own initiative. His entrepreneurial spirit is unlike any other, and I really admire the way that Josh strives to have a balanced life with his wife Hillary and his two children, Aria and Xander. He's very gifted at sales scripting. You're going to hear that in the course of our discussion. He's also one of the best, if not the best, that I know when it comes to social media marketing within the mortgage space, which has been one of his real key secrets to his success. And he currently mentors other business professionals, including those that are on his team, and he is a wonderful teacher. So without further ado, it is my great pleasure to provide you with this interview with my friend and excellent entrepreneur in the mortgage space, Josh Mettle. Josh Mettle, good morning, brother. Good to see you, man. Thanks for being a guest for my very first podcast. It's really an honor to have you. I took the easy route and picked a layup interviewing you.
All right. No air balls from the layup zone. So we're going to have a great time. I'm excited to be with you on the maiden voyage of this podcast. By the way, what are we naming this podcast?
The 360, interesting conversations with fascinating people. So it's really nice to start off with that meeting the billing, right? With you on here. So you look like you're nice and relaxed, man. You got your vest on, things are probably cooling down in the mountains of Utah, and a lot of people come in hot for these types of interviews. And I know you well enough to know that, even though it's 9:15 in the morning in Utah, you've been up for a while. Tell me about your morning routine. I know that you execute on that pretty religiously.
Yeah, I'm ready for my lunchtime snack at 9:15. This is almost midday for me. Yeah. This morning was interesting. So my alarm clock didn't go off, and thankfully Hillary's did. So at 4:09, my alarm clock went off, and I was like, man, I feel super well rested. Wonder what happened there. Well, that extra 45 minutes of sleep went a long ways, but got a great workout with Hillary in this morning, which is always a blast. Played with the kids, had breakfast. I didn't get my full hour-long meditation, which was my intention today. I was going to do one of the ones that you'd recommended for me, but I got 10 minutes of the stillness, the generous present moment meditation in. And so what I've been trying to do is really create enough space that I have a full hour. So I don't try and make my meditation fit into the time frame that the meditation can just take the amount of time that it takes. Today, I wasn't successful at that, but I did get extra sleep. I got to hang out with my family, and I got 10 minutes in. So I'll call that a win.
Absolutely. Let's dive a little deeper into that. First question I have is this. So I can't get up as early as you. I don't know why I try. I mean, your discipline to waking that early, I think probably has a little bit to do with your discipline to going to bed early. So I want to hear, first of all, about what time you go to sleep at night. And then secondly is I need a little coaching from you. So how do you avoid hitting snooze and laying there and lounging around and stretching out and dozing back off? I mean, I saw a tip and a strategy that was out on the internet somewhere about putting your phone at the other side of the room. So it requires you to get up and walk across the room, but I'd probably just dive right back under the covers after hitting snooze. How do you do that?
Well, you're exactly right. The wake up and the start to my day is immediately correlated to the way I finish the day. So let me take you back to the end of my day yesterday.
Yeah, please.
We had a big investor presentation, which for me has a lot of stress because there's a lot of numbers involved. There was a lot of things that we wanted to cover. And I know a lot of people are going to be watching that recording or there. And I just wanted to make sure we answered all the questions and we didn't miss anything. And trying to explain what we've done in 90 days of research in 60 minutes, takes a lot of concentration. And so we hit that at the end of the day, and that ends at 6:09. And at 6:09, the phone goes to do not disturb. And I rush down to Xander. We grab the football, we jump in the Jeep, we go to the park, I take off my flip-flops, and I get my feet in the grass. And I just start getting grounded and playing with my kids. And what I know is if I can get outside and I can play with my kids to end my day, it's a totally different energy that moves all the way into the next day. So that happened perfectly yesterday. We got a good, hour of playing. We watched an epic sunset that I posted on social media last night. And I was in bed by 7:45. I was asleep by 8. So then the question is, well, how do you go to sleep at 8? Well, you go to sleep at 8 because I woke up at 3:30 the morning before. And by the time you hit 7 o'clock, your body's telling you, we all run by these circadian rhythms, but we get thrown off the circadian rhythms because we have lights and screens and digital input and pings and social media and all the things that distract us. But if you can insulate yourself from those by auto setting your phone to do not disturb. So like my phone, for example, if I go into my settings real quick, my do not disturb is set automatically. I don't know if you can see that at 6:30 p.m. So at 6:30, I have it on right now because we're talking, but at 6:30 p.m., it automatically goes to do not disturb. And that means only my favorites can call in. And people can still call and text, but there's no alerts. The screen doesn't light up. I don't get notified. So that's one big tip. The other big tip is go play. Like for me, and this is something that you and I have been working on over the last couple of years, is like I've realized that my life and just the energy that I have is totally different if I bookend my days with play. So my morning play is meditation, weights, breakfast with the kids. My evening play is if I can get out on a trail with my dog, or I can go throw a football with my son, I can put my bare feet on the grass. I'm grounded and I'm detached and I'm ready for that, 7.5 hours of rest.
So you touched on it, but let's dive a little bit deeper. I mean, for those that are listening that are wondering, oh, why the hell does he go to bed so early? And how does he go to bed so early? And how does he ever catch up on any TV shows? And does he ever have a cocktail with anybody? And I'm just eating dinner at 7:45 when he's hitting the pillow. Why do you do it? Like, you touched a little bit on the payoff, but like, clearly you've tested this out a little bit, and there's a reason you've landed on waking up so early. And then there's a reason, obviously you go to bed early to be able to wake up early, but what's the effect? What's the benefit for those listening that they may want to consider?
I'll start with the why, and then I'll go into the benefit. That I had a childhood upbringing where there was a lot of insecurity around money and where we were going to live and those types of things that still drive me to this day, right? There's part of that beingness that if I'm not up and I'm not working on providing, it could all be gone tomorrow. And that is ridiculous at this point. Where I am with my investments in cash flow, like that's not even like reality, but it still drives me. And I've gotten into this habit of waking up early. And what I've realized is that it makes me feel powerful and it makes me feel present because I have the time to drink my vegetable juice and take my vitamins and drink my mushroom coffee and sit down for an hour of meditation. And then usually I do an hour of work. Then I go down to the gym and then I have breakfast with the kids. Like I get all that time that I'm in complete control. Nobody's pulling me off script. Yeah. Nobody's blowing me up. I own that ritual. And that sets me on a course. It's like, I'll liken it to dropping in on a wave, right? Like I get to dictate every stroke and the perfect stand, and then I get to drop in on that wave, and the wave just propels me for my day. If I don't do that, then it's like, just fishtail, I'm just ass over tea kettle for my day. And I've just figured out I'm a more capable human being when I script the first portion of that day, rather than running in here feeling like I'm chaotic.
So starting off on purpose, starting off in control, not having the outside world infiltrating you. I totally get it, man. When I get up really early, like when I'm down in Costa Rica, I go to bed early like you do. I go to bed like at 8:30 and I wake up when the sun rises at 5. And one of the things that's so amazing, I was talking to Liz about this the other day, is how cool it is when, it hits 9 o'clock in the morning and you look back and you go like, man, I've already gotten a workout in. I already meditated. I had a nice slow morning breakfast. I kind of planned my day, and it's still only 9 a.m. I mean, it's a really tremendous feeling of accomplishment that happens when you start your day off on purpose like that, and are free to be in control rather than reacting to everything, right? And I one of the things that I want to point out, I don't know if you know this, I don't know if we ever talked about this, but in all of the great traditions, Catholicism with Catholic priests, Muslim with their holy people, the sages of India, all of the traditions, they all wake at 4 a.m. Like that is the magic hour. And there's a real reason for that. You heard Dr. Joe talk about this when we were together, and that's because that's when the pineal gland, which is a gland that's in the back of your head right here. It's known in some traditions as the third eye if it goes all the way through, which has a lot to do with consciousness and has a lot to do with intuition and awareness and clarity and connection to source. That's opened up and at its peak level because of melatonin secretion at that hour. So for 2,000 years, they all get up at that hour, and that's when they ponder. That's when they do their best work. That's when it is statistically proven that we have the greatest mental acuity and clarity and the greatest awareness to where we can work through things. So I'm wondering if that was an intention of yours, or you just stumbled upon that hour, because 4 a.m. is the magic hour and has been for, hundreds of thousands of years.
Stumbled more than researched and found it out. I just found it to be true for myself. I was doing the generous present moment meditation this morning, and even though I only had 10 minutes, I gave myself complete permission to be present and surrender for 10 minutes. And it was enough to take me out of focusing on what I have to accomplish today, on this interview with you, I'm doing a Facebook Live Bulletproof Fire presentation right after this, like the minute we get off. And then right after that, I'm going to teach our loan officer training to, 60, 70, 80 loan officers, literally no margin, just minute to minute. And then right after that, we go into a 2-hour live event that we're hosting at my branch. And then I have coaching calls up until 6 o'clock. So that can get daunting. And if I wake up in the morning and I start thinking about all of those things and all the things that can go wrong, I'm no longer in the present moment. And all suffering in the way I see it is when you're either living something that happened in the past, or you're foreshadowing something that's going to happen in the future. And all of that to me is suffering and things you can't really control. So if I can take that morning and I can center and I can connect with the universe or God or whatever you believe in, and I can just connect to the present moment and let all of that go, it's like a freaking rad way to start your day. You just feel so, there's just so much closeness and you just feel so much power. And then if I can go straight into, Tim, some sort of, what Tim Gerber would call working on your business versus working in your business. So, if I go sit down in my office at home and I start into email, shame on me. But if I have a project teed up that I need to rewrite some scripting for a marketing campaign, or I need to, put together a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to give, something creative, if I can roll straight into that 1-2 punch, that jab cross is the most powerful combination I know.
Yeah. And, the thing I'd add to the power of what you're talking about and so brilliantly articulated is that you're actually giving yourself an opportunity out of the gate to build some momentum and to actually accomplish something that was an objective, right? Like a rock and the rock, sand, pebbles metaphor that I talk about when it comes to time management. So you're executing on at least one rock every morning before the day starts taking over and starts coming at you. And most people wake up and they go straight to the phone. They go straight to reacting. They're reacting their email. They're reacting their texts. Their nervous system gets jacked up right away. It's difficult for them to digest their first meal of the day, because they're just already revved up. And then the next thing you know, the day takes over, the day ends, you look back and you feel unaccomplished. But you're setting yourself up for success no matter what by getting up early, having this rhythm and this routine, tapping into the mental clarity and creativity that is available at that early hour, executing on something that's important. So no matter what happens from 9 a.m. afterwards, you can still look back on the day and have at least one win, if not several, when it's all said and done. Let's talk about transitions. You hit on something that I think is really important that I don't want to miss, which is, I've spent a lot of time, Josh, thinking about the subject matter of transitions and integration, and I think it happens in our lives a lot more than we realize. So let me elaborate. When you go on vacation, generally takes somebody 2 or 3 days, if they ever get there, to wind down. Okay, that's a transition into a different state of being, of presence, of being relaxed, of having fun, of being in joy. And there's an integration into that, right? And then when you come back from vacation, a lot of times it can take people a day or two to turn their brain back on. I mean, I just got back from a long one myself where my brain was totally turned off, and there's this transition period to turn it back on. Same holds true for having a jacked up, highly intense day, getting home with your family. You have a difficult time. Some people have a very difficult time. I sure did, in turning the brain off when you're having dinner with your family. And that's another transition point. We have all these transitions from one energetic rhythm to another throughout the day. Since we're sticking with the subject matter here for just a moment of starting off your day right, you actually touched on a really important transition point, putting your feet in the grass, putting the do not disturb on. Let's talk about that for a minute, how you transition back into being a father and a husband and not the entrepreneur on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's interesting you just named that a transition, because I hadn't actually identified that as something that was so significant. I just am aware that I feel better. And here's what's interesting. Even if I get the same amount of sleep, but I come out of a late training or a late phone call, and it's 7 o'clock and I get off, and now really all there is time to take vitamins and set out my coffee, and then I'm going to go sit down in bed. I can get the same amount of sleep, but the energetic experience the next day is totally different. I would say, if I do that a couple days in a row, I'm a cigarette that's smoked all the way down to the butt. You know what I mean? There's just nothing left. But what I've figured out is that the whole rhythm of my life works better if I can get to a state of play. And when I say play, a walk with my dog, sitting on the deck watching the sunshine with my wife for 30 minutes, anything that is really connection with another human being. But oftentimes that involves balls or a one-wheel skateboard thing or chasing the dog. Usually there's some sort of activity around it. For some reason, that activity puts the relationship with my family and my relationship probably with myself, as I'm hearing myself think this out, at a better place the next day. And I can keep working those really long days, as long as I have those transitions, as you called it, in place. So play for me, or transition as you're calling it, is absolutely key. And I really hadn't quite labeled it the way you had. So thanks for bringing that up.
Well, I'm hearing a couple of things in that. The first thing I'm hearing is that you have a transition routine into sleep. Okay. And that's a really important thing. I mean, think about how many people are on their email at 10:30 at night, wound themselves down with a couple of cocktails, and then they're trying to have a restful night of sleep, and they hit the pillow and their mind's still racing. So they haven't created transition plan to go into sleep state. And what you're talking about connection, the longest road in the world is from your head to your heart. I mean, that is the super highway that we're all trying to travel. And there are a lot of speed bumps and roadblocks along the way, right? And what you're doing is you've systematically built in a pathway to move from here at 6:30 at night into here.
Wow.
And from here, it's a lot easier because your nervous system's relaxed to have a restful night of sleep. And I think one of the things, I don't know if you read The Power of Full Engagement, but that book that we had the book club on, they talked about that, like it's intense bursts of exertion followed by rest, right? So you're creating that as a natural byproduct of the way that you've set up your life, is that you have these intense bursts of focused, in your head, strategic entrepreneur time. And then you've embraced the discipline of moving out of that and giving your mind some time to rest so you can be rejuvenated for the next day and to take it on, fast and furious like you do. So let's I want to take 2 steps backwards. I mean, imagine some of the people that jumped on here wanting to know, like, hey, I want to hear about Josh Mettle's marketing strategies and what's he doing right now to transition now that interest rates are starting to go up a little bit. And we're going to get there, I promise. But we're gonna go 2 steps backward, because one of the things that is really important to me during these interviews is we get to know the person, because it's what is behind the activity and behind the byproduct of their success that I think has everything to do with their success. So I want to start back when you were a boy. Like, what were your hobbies when you were a young boy? Tell me a little bit about your childhood.
My earliest hobby I can remember, Tim, was selling things. I mean, I was into skateboards and selling things. When I was, I think I was about 8 years old, I joined the Boy Scouts, and I joined halfway through they have this Boy Scout event at the end of the year. I can't quite recall what they call that, but it was like a Boy Scout jamboree. And the Boy Scouts would sell tickets for like 9 months or something like that. And then at the end of the year, they'd have this big jamboree, and it was a huge Boy Scout party. And it was like a carnival, and you'd bring your kids, and there was, popcorn and the candied apples and everything. It was like a really cool party. And so what you would do is you'd sell these tickets to the jamboree. And then whoever had the most amount of tickets got a bunch of gifts and an award and a bunch of recognition and a merit badge. And so I remember I came in about 5 months into the 9-month competition. This is going back to I was 8 years old. So I'm in there. I'm close on those dates. And I started selling tickets. And in the preceding 4 months or 3 months, however much time I had, I ended up selling more jamboree tickets than any Boy Scout in the whole state of California at 8 years old. So I'm not sure 100% where that hustle came from.
But what was that? What would you, if you had to pinpoint, why were you so much more successful at it? Was it your scripting? Was it your stick-to-itiveness, your aggressiveness? What was it? What you're not being afraid to hear no? I mean, what was the magic, man?
The first thing that comes up to me is that I just didn't have a problem to confront the challenge. And I think a lot of children and probably a lot of adults just like picking up that phone call and making a hard call, or, cold calling a realtor or something like that. That wasn't a real hang up for me. So one of my success strategies was my mom would go to the grocery store, and she'd say, okay, you've got 45 minutes. So I'd spend the first 20 minutes at the entry door trying to sell these tickets. And what would everybody say when they were going in? Yeah, I'm interested, but I'll get it on my way out. And I realized that the exit door was on, the other side of the store. So I'd spend 20 minutes at the entry door, and then I'd spend the next 25 minutes at the exit door. And I was like, hey, you said on your way in, you'd buy one on your way out. I got 2 tickets for you. So I would just say, hey, you got to come to the jamboree. I want to win this competition. It's for a good cause. Let's go. And so I think one thing would just be confront. I don't know where I think there was a part of just my growing up where, single mom, she was a solo entrepreneur. She worked her butt off, but we had the roller coasters financially. And there was a lot of insecurity and fear around just financial well-being and is there going to be enough food, and is there going to be a gang shooting outside of our 400 square foot apartment tonight? I mean, all that kind of stuff as a kid made me realize early that I was going to have to figure it out, and I was going to have to take full responsibility for this situation myself. And so I think part of that probably played into that aggressiveness. Another story was I used to sell popcorn. We lived in a Holiday Inn hotel for about 3 months one time. And I can't remember the backstory of why that happened, but we did. And what I realized was all the people on the weekend would go down to the pool and party by the pool. And so I would pop popcorn. I'd buy like the Orville Redenbacher big gallons of popcorn, and I'd pop popcorn, put them in brown bags, put butter on them, and then I'd go around the pool and I'd sell them for $1. So I'd make like $200 in popcorn sales in a weekend, and it would cost us, $20 for the popcorn, the butter, the popcorn maker, the whole thing. And then I would just sell popcorn every single weekend. And then when I got everybody at the pool, I'd just go door to door and knock down all the hallways at the Holiday Inn. And what are you going to do? There's a 9-year-old kid with a bag of popcorn. He's like, hey, you want to watch the game today? You need popcorn. And, so it's just in my blood, I guess.
So I find, having, coached a lot of people now over a long period of time, that a lot of the successful people like yourself have a story. There's always a story, which is like why I like to go back to someone's childhood. I mean, there are people that are in this business of doing mortgages or selling real estate or sales in general that have this natural innate ability to put their own back against the wall and to have the chutzpah, to just go hard, right? And there's always a story behind that. I don't believe that any of us are just born with that. Like, I think that there's some social upbringing, there's some nurture, if you will, in the nature nurture model that creates that. Okay, so your story is, just articulated very briefly. I know more depth to it, but you were in a situation where, when you became an adult, you're like, I don't want to have my kids live the life that I had to live as a kid, where I was having to hustle so hard. So that's your why. That's like the driving force. But one of the things that I'm also aware of, because I've got my own story, which we won't get into, that has driven me, is that can be also our blind spot, our shadow side, right? Like,
Sure.
We just drive so hard that we've eroded or atrophied the muscle of play or the muscle of relaxation and presence and these types of things. So how do you deal with that? I mean, you touched a little bit upon it, but is there any more that you'd want to say? I mean, how you put your feet in the grass, you play catch with Xander with the football, you go out for a walk with your dog. Like, do you feel that in your life, that's an area that you still need to work on consistently, because left to your own devices, you would just be driving hard all the time?
100%. And I want to touch on that. I'd like to go back because one other thing came up for me, which was, I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention that Mom, being a solo entrepreneur, taught me that I was thinking, where did I get that sense of responsibility that I had to figure this out for myself? Well, I got that from watching Mom, right? She was finding one business to the next. She would work ridiculous, 16-hour days. I remember waking up in the middle of the night or first thing in the morning, and she's always already working. So she wasn't, like an order taker that just checked in conveniently from 9 to 5. Like, she was hustling. And sometimes there were windfalls and things went great. And a lot of times there were, financial insecurities. But to watch her example of hustling and never getting up and taking full responsibility for where she was and getting ahead, certainly a lot of my modeling came from watching her. And we had a lot of fun stories of me working in her businesses over the years that are like really pleasant memories that are still connected to my heart. So anyways, I wanted to touch on that because Mom deserves a ton of credit. As it relates to the question about, this story, whatever your story is or my story is, it drives us, and it can drive us towards Negativeville, or it can drive us to a happy place. I know for me, that has been something that I've been aware of, that, as you said, left to my own devices, I would have just been driving away from the fear for my whole life. And I remember when we started coaching, my goal was, I think it was triple my current income level, because, and one of the things that you helped me with and your team helped me with was to ask the question, why, why, what happens then? And I started to realize that I've pinned my happiness somewhere out into the future, and it's tied to some arbitrary level of success or financial gain. And the question is, okay, well, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, you would have looked at where you are today and you would have said, well, if I could have ever got to that digit in a year, well, then I'm going to be happy. Well, then you did that and you doubled that digit. And now you're saying if you double that digit again, that you're going to be happy. Like, I just had to have some help to figure out that wasn't the path that was going to lead to happiness for me. That was the path that was going to lead to divorce and regret. So somewhere along that path, I had to reorientate to what it is that actually derives happiness. And it is ritual. It is transition time with family. It is slowing down to play a little bit. So I'm not going to say I have that mastered. I'm still very much working on it. And if you ask my wife, she'll tell you that I'm not doing all that great at it, but I'm doing a lot better at it than if I wouldn't have put the attention on it and have the awareness around it that I do.
So, I mean, there are people that have that part mastered, right? They're just blissfully present a lot of time. They're really connected, et cetera. And then they're struggling to earn enough money, right? So it's like, it's the truth is always somewhere in the middle. It's always about balance. It's the yin and yang of life, right? So it's about finding that equilibrium. So it's interesting to hear that is, as is the case with me. It's always been my work. So I totally can relate to what you're talking about. I want to get into business here in just a minute, but I want to ask you a really important question about aging. Okay. I know that this is a topic. I've heard you bring this up before. I believe you've said you want to live to be 120 years old. Is that correct?
You're right. Yep.
Okay. So I have some opinions about that. We might have a slight little debate here. We'll see how it all unfolds, but I'm curious about, like, where do these ambitions come from? Why do you want to live to be 120 years old? Let's start there.
So I started listening to a podcast. I believe it's called Exponential Abundance. I can look it up on my phone here. And they started talking about human longevity, and started talking about all of the technology and all of the medical advancement that's coming along between, supercomputing and 3D printing and DNA splicing and everything else that's all kind of converging at the same time. And as I started to listen and learn about those technologies, I just started to think, man, that really registers for me. And one of the things that was described in that podcast is that we'll hit a point with technology and where we are with medical advancement that every year that you are able to stay alive on your own, technology will advance at a pace to keep you another year older. So essentially, you've hit this kind of place where if you have enough money and you're in good enough shape, once you hit that place in technology development, that you could essentially, live forever. And I'll give you the name of the podcast, so you can maybe put it in the notes if people want to check it out. But it was just something that was really fascinating to me, and I started going down that rabbit hole. And then, when I started my journey into meditation, I believe that meditation has put me in a lot better physical shape. In other words, I had a lot of injuries from a Harley Davidson crash, from shoulder surgery when I played college football, from hip surgery in high school football, broken wrist. I mean, if you did an X-ray on my body,
surfing accident in Costa Rica.
Surfing accident. That's right. I mean, my body's been, through the ringer, and there was a lot of plaguing injuries that just really nagged my exercise routine. And since I really started getting into meditation, let's say maybe 2 or 3 years ago, the vast majority of those plaguing injuries are gone and do not bother me anymore. And that just kind of furthered my belief. Okay, if I can eat right, if I can sleep right, if I can continue to pursue these things that are conducive to human longevity, if I stay in a meditation routine, I believe it's possible to live a lot longer than the current expectation of 80 years today. So I picked a number and I said, all right, let's go for that.
So here was my, you've somewhat answered my inquiry in the sense that I've kind of viewed it through a different lens of like, I see like my mom, she's 79 years old and she just found out like a couple of days ago that she tore a rotator cuff. And now she's faced with whether or not she's going to have rotator cuff surgery at the age of 79. My dad had both of his knees replaced. He was on kidney dialysis, poor man, before he died. I mean, he really suffered. So I've seen a lot of people get old, mid 70s, late 70s, early 80s. And they're kept alive by medical science, but their quality of life is not good at all. Like my dad, like the last 8-10 years of his life, bro, were really tough, and I've asked myself the question, like, why would I want to live to be 100? Like if the last 20 years of my life were, I'm being kept alive, but it's not a quality experience. What's the real value in that? So I think that you've answered that. I think I understand your answer, which is, utilizing technology, utilizing meditation, eating right, keeping your body fit, making sure that your muscle mass is strong enough to where your ligaments and all that kind of stuff are supported to where you're actually active and having an enjoyable life. So let me ask you this question. Since you've put so much thought into it, you're only a little more than a third of the way home, brother. I mean, you got like 63% of the race or something like that left to run. What's Josh Mettle's life and day look like when he's 95?
Well, I'm going to script out for you my 100th year birthday party, because I've already, this is going to happen as far as I'm concerned. I've decided on it and I've already scripted out. And at 100, and this speaks to what you were talking about, like I have no interest in living to 120 if life sucks. Like life has to be rad. I still have to, be fascinated in something. I still have to have young friends. I still have to, be able to meditate and walk and do the things that would still be rewarding at that age. I probably won't be surfing at 120, but on my 100th birthday, if I play my cards right, what I would really enjoy doing is waking up and having an incredible sunrise meditation, followed by a day of probably a half day, a morning of surfing. I want to have all my friends and relatives and great grandkids at that point at a lunch on the beach with incredible wine, seafood. You can see the beach and the sheer and the candles and just, as decadent and as amazing of a beachside meal as you've ever had in your entire life. I want to watch the sunset and I want to have sex. Like that is going to happen on my 100th birthday. And if I can't check into those activities, then I don't want to. Will
you be having sex anymore. With someone or with yourself?
Well, probably both. I plan to be pretty ambitious at that age, virile and vigorous. But, I think part of it is deciding that you're going to live the lifestyle that's going to give you the highest propensity of chance to get to that end. And just real quick, because it was driving me crazy, the podcast I'm talking about is Increasing Abundance and Exponential Technology. And the host of that is Peter Diamandis, who's the guy behind the X Prize, and then Dan Sullivan, who is the CEO and founder of Strategic Coach. And it's a fascinating podcast. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of their episodes around human longevity. I encourage anybody to check it out.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. I'm going to share a quote with you, tying into and tying down this subject that we've been talking about. And then we're going to transition into your history as a mortgage originator and some things that you would suggest in today's market. My coach, her name is Nicole. She's been my coach for 12 years now. I think it's fair to say that she knows me better than anybody on the planet. She said, and I quote, I'm going to read it because I wrote it down because I want to make sure I got it right. She said, Tim, she said this to me about 5-6 years ago. She said, be careful of your desire to consume life and its impact on the experience that you're having in your life. I'm wondering how you feel about that statement.
I think it's brilliant. And, there's an Einstein quote that I am not going to get exactly right, but it parallels what she said. He said that a calm and modest life is more rewarding than a life filled with aspiration and stress. And, that's kind of an interesting quote from Albert Einstein, but that actually piece of paper that he wrote that on was turned into an art piece and sold for over $1 million. And I thought that was a really interesting quote that came from him. And so I think that goes back to this life balance, right? If we take what fuels us and we allow it to consume us, and we just act off of that energy without some sort of regard to how we're impacting the people around us, our relationships, our connection to the universe, our connection to our family, ultimately we're going to end up way off course. And we're chasing something that we thought was going to yield us happiness, but all too often just brings us separation and misery. So yeah. I think her wisdom is spot on.
Yeah. I mean, I've done a ton of traveling in my life, and there used to be a point in time in my life where I literally could tell you what the next 5 vacations were that I was going to take, because they were all booked and paid for, like literally a year in advance. And then I realized after a while that I'm just racing from one vacation to the other, and I'm not really actually having the fullest experience of those moments, because I'm on this hamster wheel of wanting to conquer and achieve. And I was even doing it with my vacations. It was like I was a voracious eater of life, but I wasn't digesting my food, and I bring it up because I know there's a lot of ambitious people that are listening to this. I'm sure there's a lot of people that can really relate to you. I think you and I have a lot of similarities in our personality style. We're both highly driven people. And, sometimes that little humble approach to life that Einstein's talking about just kind of slowing down and going for a slow walk, and, giving a long hug to your partner, or just being with yourself. The inner landscape that you're talking about through meditation is one that very few of us spend a lot of time in. And those of you that don't know that are listening, I've been an avid meditator for a very long time now, so it's a big part of my life too. So let's transition to your career. So you started on a very ominous day in American history. Your first day as an originator was a day that everybody remembers, that's at least old enough to remember. What was your first day in the business, and tell us a little bit about the beginning of your career?
Yeah, I'll give you the transition before I got there, because I think it's kind of interesting. I was running so after college football, I ended up at a gym. I was working out at a gym feverishly to try and get back in shape. And I was going to go back and finish my undergrad and then get an MBA. And I ended up being hired into that gym and ended up as a sales manager there, and was, successful beyond what I thought was possible growing up. When I was growing up, the person around me that had the highest income that I knew of was $35,000 a year. And so I thought, if I could ever make it to that place, then I would have arrived. Like that's kind of like the apex. And within 2 years of working at the gym, I was making almost 4 times that amount. And I was, 21 years old or something like that. It was pretty wild. And that was really my indoctrination into formalized sales. And I replaced the hunger from football, competing in football, to the hunger of competing to see my name on the top of the page, and in terms of the sales list. And then through that experience, I met a gentleman who owned a mortgage company called The Money Shop. And so when I ended up quitting the gym,
what a great name.
Yeah, The Money Shop. It was right next to the pawn shop. I mean,
sounds quasi shady, Josh.
Quasi shady. They did most of the option arms in America, I think. And when he, ended up hiring me into mortgages, the plan was I was going to do mortgages, and then I was going to go back and get my MBA at night. So first day, I'm reporting to the office, and I'm getting dressed up, which is a new experience for me because I'd lived in gym clothes for the last 23 years of my life. And I turn on the TV, and it's 9/11. That was day number one in the mortgage industry for me. And I'm sure you remember that feeling that morning. It was like, what do we do? It was almost like time just stopped. You know, does life go on? Should I go into the office? What should happen? There was nobody on the streets, because I remember I actually did drive into the office. There was nobody there. And it just felt like the whole world paused for that moment. And then even in the weeks after, I don't know if you remember, but it was weird. It was like, is it okay to go back to business? Are we mourning or are we healing? And it was a really ominous kind of just a very unique experience of starting into this industry.
So how long, okay, so actually I just want to point something out and then I want to ask you a question. So notice, for those of you listening here, that there's this continual theme that's starting to build. Okay, there's this young boy who was hungry that figured out from his driven state that he needed to go to both doors to make more sales to catch up with the 4 months that he had lost. And then he was roaming around the swimming pool with buttered popcorn and making a couple $100 a weekend. And then he took that same aggressive, tenacious attitude onto the football field. And we won't get into that story, but for those of you that, don't know this about Josh, I mean, he wasn't like he started playing football when he was 8. He was a late bloomer to that too, but then quickly caught up just as he did in the sales positions. And then when that ended, he took that same tenacity, that same motivating force, that same line of energy that pushed him to the gym and now into the mortgage business. So when you started in the mortgage business, what year was it, first of all?
2001.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Of course. So 2001, which was actually a really great year to be starting in the mortgage business. I mean, that was like the beginning of a nice little refi boom.
It was.
That went on through about 2005. And I'm sure that was helpful in you getting started. But then you became and are known for being a tremendous marketer. So let's talk about marketing, okay? And I'm gonna ask a question that's gonna paint a little bit of a landscape that you can then springboard and answer, and probably dive into marketing and sales and all these types of things. So I'm gonna assume for a moment, or let's assume for a moment, that I take you out of Park City, Utah, and I say, look, you can't ever make another phone call in the state of Utah again. You can't call any of the doctors that you do business for. You can't even tap into your existing resource of physicians, loans, and all of that. And I'm going to put you can't touch your database. You can't call any of those referral partners. I'm taking you and I'm dropping you into Chicago. Okay. And you're going to start all over today. What are the first 2 or 3 things that you would do with the wisdom that you have at this time in the current market, where we think rates may be going in 2022? What are the 2 or 3 things that you're first focused on?
Well, I've had 2 runs in the mortgage industry, or 2 themes, maybe is a better way to say that. The first one was, I was a real estate investor, and my mom and I started investing, I think when I was maybe 21. It was one of the events that actually got me into the mortgage industry, is getting burned in a mortgage transaction. And I'm like, well, if this is what the best of the industry's got, I should probably pursue this. And the first 10 years through 2010. So the first 9 years was identifying that investors were having a hard time getting financing. Even though we had the fast and easy loans, even though we had the stated income, there was more hair on an investor loan than there was on a FHA purchase or a 20% down conventional. They usually had multiple businesses. They usually had multiple entities. They usually had lots of rental properties. And my mom, who had gone back and gotten a law degree very late, I think she was in her late 40s or maybe even 50s when she got her law degree, she started working with landlords doing asset protection and landlord tenant law. And she would come to me and say, hey, these landlords, just like I was having a hard time getting financing for my investment properties, she said, I just keep running into investors who are having a hard time getting financing. So I found the solution and built the system. And because I knew investing, I could speak the language with them, and it was a very easy flow, and I knew how to get them through the loan process. So if I think back on that, I found somebody who was having a problem. I had inside knowledge because I knew loans and I was an investor, and I had researched all the programs because I was trying to get loans myself. Like at this point, between 2000, let's just call it 2000 and 2010, mom and I had bought, I think 63 units, and trying to get financing when you had 20 or 30 units was not an easy task. And so I'd figured that out for myself and for my mom, and now I could apply that solution to my clients. Fast forward, Great Recession hits. All my clients and all my database are investors, builders, and realtors who work with builders. Gone, all of them, every single one of them. Bankrupt, foreclosure, moved out of the state of Utah, out of the game. Literally every single contact I had. In fact, I think there was one of my referral partners that still muddled through, but he was crushed. He's never really kind of gotten back to the glory he was before. So I somehow stumbled on the next group of people that were having a problem getting financing and being challenged. And odd as that was doctors. Well, why? Well, we all know what happened with credit standards after the Great Recession, right? The ability to get a loan got significantly higher. If you look at the mortgage credit index, it dropped from 400 to 100 or something like that, and it was just difficult to get a loan. And these doctors that were coming out of residency or fellowship, they'd been living on $60,000, piling up credit card debts and student loan debts. Now we're going to have this future employment contract, and they wanted to buy a home with a negative net worth, tax returns that didn't show they made any money, and they've never really banked a check yet, and they wanted to close on a home. And all those things. Oh, and by the way, they wanted to relocate their family across the country and move in before their first day on the job. So there was a lot at risk, and there were a lot of detractors to banks qualifying those doctors. And I figured out how to get them done. We used local community banks. We used a broker program. We used Fannie Freddie. We used FHA. Like, we used this patchwork of solutions to figure out how to finance these doctors. And then we started down marketing, which we can go to next. But to answer your question, what would I do if you drop me with no resources and start over in Chicago? I would have to figure out who's having a problem. Exactly. Is it high-rise condos? Is it jumbo? Is it, is it first-time home buyers and affordability? I don't know, because I'd have to get boots on the ground. But the first thing that I would be looking for is, and I would talk to realtors, is I would say, who are you having the hardest time financing? And I'd figure out who that group was. I'd figure out the solution for it. And then I would just start, and this parlays into the marketing conversation, and then I would just start talking about their problems in my social media and in my marketing and in my presentations. And once we start to show empathy, we can then start to show authority that we can solve those problems, and the referrals would start coming in.
Okay, so I want you to go into some really important principles of marketing, which you just started to scratch the surface on, because I think there's a tremendous amount of wisdom in what you have to share. But before you do, I want to summarize, and I want to share a couple of my own personal experiences. So the first thing that I want everybody to take in here is that we're seeing a pattern again, okay? Resourcefulness, taking a step back, really thinking for a moment about, who has a problem right now that's not being served and solved? Where are there opportunities that might not be met at this point in time by most of the people that do what I do for a living? It was the same strategy that you used when you went to the people exiting the store. Okay. You were looking at where am I swinging and missing when I'm at the plate, to use the baseball metaphor, and then you're getting out in front of it and solving problems for people based upon the information that you're getting. Now, I'll give you an example, and I want to get back to another thing that we were talking about, which is transitions and integration. So the reason I asked this question is because we're likely on the cusp of some type of a transition in the market. At least as we speak, when this interview is being done, refis have really slowed down a lot because we've had a little bit of an uptick in rates. Generally, what happens when that occurs is that most of the people in this industry just get stuck in lead boots. They've been selling the same product. They've been doing the exact same thing, rinse, wash, repeat, for the last 2-3 years. And it's those that are nimble and those that are strategic back to the getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and spending a little bit of quiet time on thinking strategy, working on your business, like Gerber said, rather than in it all the time. Where are their needs? How can I fulfill them? I want to take you back to 1994 for a quick moment, share a quick story. So in 1994, which is before you were in the business, I was living in Northridge. I'd been in Northridge, California. I'd been in the business 2 years. First 2 years were great. You know, I made really good money. I made over $100,000 in my first full year in the business, and I was 27 years old.
Awesome.
Northridge earthquake hits,
6.7.
6.7 earthquake. 50% of the houses in the San Fernando Valley are red tagged. I don't know if you guys know what that means, but that means that they don't appraise, they're damaged. So you can't refi them. Okay. Interest rates spiked from low sevens to mid nines.
Oh,
Okay. 1994. All right. So I'm like, where am I even going to get a loan? Like originating one loan a week was a monumental event. And I had to go to the same place that you went to. And Stephen Marshall, who most of you know, he and I are in the business at the same time. We used to strategize a lot, and we'd have this conversation on a consistent basis. The exact conversation that Josh is posing to you right now. What needs are there out there that are not being served?
yeah.
Everybody's doing the same thing, but there's stuff that people need that's not being taken care of. And how can we be the specialist in that area? So that's where the need that wasn't being served back then was cash flow. You know, people were struggling. A 9.5% or 9.25% 30-year fix was going to be a crippling payment. So that's where I figured out how to sell the option arm, and to sell it in a way that was educational and that gave people the understanding that it's actually two loans in one, that you can make the fully amortized payment, or you could treat it like an equity line of credit on your property and make the minimum payment and tap into your equity when cash flow is challenging at that time. And I was able to fight my way through and get 2, 3, 4 loans a month done selling this product that nobody else was selling, because nobody knew how to sell it and nobody had identified the need, which was there are people that need a product that has the flexibility for their cash flow purposes. Now, in closing, looking forward into 2022 and beyond, if rates are to go up, you need to be the first one to pivot. If you're the one that's stuck in lead boots like everybody else, you're all going to be fighting for the same cheese that is a very small piece. But there are other pieces of cheese that nobody's even looking at. And that's where, when the yield curve, normalizes, you can start looking at 5-1s and 7-1s and other types of products that could be of benefit to people, or cash out refis or second trust deed equity lines of credit, stuff to weather the storm. So with that said, I want to go back to you now on, if you want to comment on any of that, feel free. And if not, dive more into your marketing strategy that you were starting to go into as it relates to your new career in Chicago.
Well, let me touch on what you said real quick, and then we'll go on that. But there are always problems in every business. And the reason why most people don't see them, or let's just say that, few see them, is because they are living in this constantly reactive state. In other words, if this interview with Tim started at 9 a.m. and I woke up at 8 and I rolled in here at 8:50, my entire day would have been reactive. And by the way, when I got here, my mouse didn't work, my keyboard didn't work, and my internet didn't work. And we still had enough time to pull this off. And I'm not like a frantic mess, because I prepared myself for this day with the expectation that things were going to go wrong and that I was going to have to adapt to it. And I created, that visual that I used before of dropping into the wave and then letting the wave propel me, because I've controlled the first part of that day. That is quintessential for being able to spot the problems. If you're in constant react mode and you're just one emergency to the next, you can never zoom out far enough to look down and really see what's going on. You're just in survival mode. So step one is we got to get ourselves out of survival mode and into an energy where we're at cause. We are causing everything that's in our environment to happen. And yes, there's going to be internet outages and everything else. There's going to be things that I can't control, but I certainly controlled the 4 hours before I got here. And that certainly prepared me to take on those things that came up and not let it completely ruin me for the day and for this interview and for all the things that I have to do afterwards. So the point was, you were able to zoom out enough, have a look at the market and go, okay, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad. But where's the problem? Where's the opportunity? Where are people suffering? What are their problems? And if I can figure out their problems, then I can figure out how to match them with solutions. Same thing that I did with investors that had 23 properties that were looking to buy their 24th home. Same thing I did for doctors that owed $800,000 in student loans and made $43,000 last year and wanted to buy a $600,000 house with no money down. I saw the problems. I figured out how to find the solutions, but none of those things come to fruition if you're in a reactive state 24/7. So that's got to be step one to this equation.
Yeah, and being the expert at something, right? Rather than being a generalist. And keep going. You're on fire. I want to hear more about the marketing approach. Let's dive into that,
Yeah, and that's another great point. So then let's say we're at cause over our day, and we've got time to zoom out. We've got time to work on our business instead of just in our business. When I transitioned into the physician loan side of the business, first it was just trying to figure out, where are the solutions? What are the patchwork of mortgage programs I need to bring together in order to solve this problem for doctors? Then I started to get into marketing. And, this was a time where I remember I think it was 2010, because the Utah recession happened later than everybody else's housing correction. California was coming up when we started to go down. And I had my biggest year ever. It was the first time I ever broke 7 figures in the mortgage business. And myself and one assistant and one processor, we closed like 360 loans that year, 363 loans. And the end of that year, coming into January of the next year, and I can't remember if I was coming into 2010 or coming into 2011, but I looked down in my pipeline. I closed out December. I was going into January's pipeline, and I had 2 loans in my pipeline. And this was a guy who was working new construction for investors. So it would not be unusual for me to have over 100 under contracts in my spreadsheet, because they'd go out for 6 months as the homes were being built. And I had 2 loans. And at the time, we had 63 rental units. 4 of them were under renovation, massive cash flow going out to renovate those properties, very little liquidity because all my net worth was in real estate. And we were trying to build the cash flow of that engine, but it was very capital intensive to renovate the properties at that time. And the market shifted. And I, out of just fear, started studying internet marketing. In fact, my mom started Utah Landlady Utah Law Lady. Her current website's Utah Landlady, Utah Law Lady. And she was getting all these leads from the internet, from this website. And I said, well, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try UtahPhysicianHomeLoans.com and just see what happens. And so we started this website. I started taking internet marketing classes from people like Eben Pagan and Frank Kern, and listening to the whole No BS marketing series from Dan Kennedy and his partner, Bill Glazier. And so I would wake up, Tim, at 1:30 in the morning. This is no bullshit. I did this for 3 years. 1:30 in the frickin' morning. By 2:30 in the morning, because it would take me, 45 minutes to kind of wipe the cobwebs out, get coffee down, and get rolling. By 2:15 in the morning, I was on some internet marketing seminar, and I would watch that for about 90 minutes. Then I would have about an hour to implement whatever I was learning. And that would be writing content, writing ideas for videos, writing ideas for ads. And then Hillary and I would go to the gym at 5 a.m. And then we would, I'd be in the office by 8. I did that for 3 freaking years, dude. I lived on 4 hours of sleep. It was like 9 o'clock till 1 o'clock or something like that. But in that process, I learned internet marketing, and I learned how people are finding businesses online. I'll just share one other quick story, and then I'll come up for a breath and let you interject. But at this time, this is right about when Google bought YouTube. And I don't know if you remember that event, but they paid a vast fortune for YouTube. And I started listening to some of these internet marketers, and they're like, look, take everything that we've been teaching you how to do in writing in terms of writing copy for direct mailers, for your newsletters, for coupons, for your websites, and take all of that copy and turn it into videos. And one of the marketers that I was listening to said, just write down the 10 most frequently asked questions that your target market is asking you, and then film YouTube videos and name the YouTube videos the same as the questions the people are asking you. So for me, it was doctors, and the doctors were asking me, and I had a little, sheet of paper by me, which were my doctor questions pad. And on there, it was, how do I buy a home with no money down? Can I avoid mortgage insurance when putting less than 20% down? Can I buy a home using my future contract for employment information? So whatever they would ask me, I would jot down. I would then kind of curate those into a common question, and I would film videos answering those questions and name the questions the same as what they posed to me verbally. Because what they were posing to me verbally, they were also typing into Google at that time, and Google was sending everybody to YouTube. So I do this, very low tech, everything wrong, no tagging, like any of the stuff that we've developed now. I didn't know any of that. And I'll never forget, I typed in physician home loans into Google just to see what would come up. Out of the first 15 listings, my YouTube videos were 3 out of the first 15.
Wow.
I literally owned Google when it came to physician home loans, and the leads just started piling in. And I remember days when I would clear my voicemail. I'd have 12 people to call back. By the time I cleared my voicemail and hung up, there was 10 more voicemails. And I was like, oh shit, I'm going to need some help. And that's when we started really building the team out.
So summarizing for everyone. So identifying where there are needs. From there, doing your homework and finding solutions, which a lot of the time has to do with you being resourceful and figuring out product offerings that others may not know about. I had to do the same thing back in the day, like I said, with just educating myself on this cost of funds index that nobody knew how to sell. Okay. Once you found the product offering, then posing brilliant advice, like logging the questions you get, taking note of the inquiries, because they're going to be the same inquiries that people are going to type into their search engine, and then creating videos. Now let's talk about the videos for a minute, because there can be this impression that, well, Tim Braheem and Josh Mettle, they're just naturals on video. Like they know what they're doing. They have a ton of experience with it. And that's not me. I'm not good on video. And I find that people, shy away from video. And then frankly, those that do, and I'll give you my opinions after I hear yours, but those that do, I don't think do a very good job of it most of the time. I don't think that the videos that I see in most cases by people in the mortgage profession are particularly compelling. So number one, how did you get used to doing video? Did it come naturally to you, or did you have to work on it? Number two, what are some of your rules about video creation that you find to be incredibly important?
Entrepreneurs' job is to find solutions and to find out how to do things that they don't know how to do. Employees' jobs are to find problems. Now they're both the same thing, and I don't mean to be rude in any way, shape, or form, but this is really one of the big delineations between employees and entrepreneurs. Employee finds a problem and says, oh crap, I have a problem. Entrepreneur finds a problem and goes, oh, I found an opportunity. And my job is to learn how to do that thing, or to find someone, if it's not going to be, if you don't want to learn how to do it, then you need to find a who to do it. Somebody else knows how to do that thing. So we have to fight our way through those things. There is no excuse to say, I'm not good at video. I was not good at video. I am still working to this day to have a more magnetic and influential message. And that's true with public speaking or video. But the first 100 were grueling. I was in my own head. I wasn't sure on my message. I didn't want to sound stupid. I wanted to make sure my hair looked okay. Like all of those crazy considerations.
Has your hair ever not looked okay?
It does. It's just, you have to have the right hair products. Hillary takes care of me that way, but there are days. It is one of my insecurities for sure. I got to make sure the hair is on point before we hit play video. But all of those things are true for everybody. And I promise Tim had the same challenges. We all had the same challenges of wanting to get on there and say something that is influential and impactful and having insecurities around it. And there's no way to get good at it other than just doing it. And just, you can study, I'll give you a few tips, but at the end of the day, you cannot get to the skill level that you're going to get to on your 100th video, on your first video. You just have to go through the sequence of doing them and learning them and becoming more comfortable with them. And then one day somebody says to you, how did you become like a natural on video? And you're like, I'm a natural? I didn't know I got there. Thank you very much. So you just have to do it is the answer to that question. Now, in regards to having a more influential message, I can give you, a couple of tips. Donald Miller has written some marketing books. His first book that I read was Becoming a Story Brand. And then he has a sequel to that, another one that is targeted. It's titled something marketing. I don't remember the name of it, but go to Amazon, search Donald Miller. And Donald really summarized in one book everything that I'd learned in marketing in the previous 10 years and all the courses I'd been through. And he made it really simple to understand. And one of the things that Donald taught me is this influence formula. Hey, if you want to get a prospect, a client, if you want to get their attention, then stop talking about yourself. Start talking about something that they care about, because just drive down the freeway. There's so much noise, text messages, things that go off on our phones. There's so much noise. As humans, we have to shut all that stuff out or we can't get anything done. And so what Donald will say is in all of your marketing, stop positioning yourself as the hero. Start positioning the client or the customer as the hero in the journey, and tell them how you can help them thrive and survive. So now they're the hero. I am the guide, and I'm helping them on their journey. So that's kind of like the overarching principle of how I look at all of our marketing. And then he says there's a very simple formula that will always get your customers' attention. And that formula is talk about their problems, show empathy, then show that you have authority. You've guided people that have those same problems through this experience to a happy ending. And then show them that you have, so let me start over. Problem, empathy, experience, and then call to action. So it's a 4-step process, but it starts with you talking about, hey, are you a physician fresh out of residency or fellowship, trying to buy your first home with a massive amount of student loans, no employment contract in hand, and no history of earning income? We understand the challenges of the mortgage market today and how that can be almost scary and embarrassing. We've helped hundreds of physicians over the years, just like you, circumvent those underwriting and mortgage challenges to find a happy home. Reach out to us for more information, right? So I'm just painting the picture. I have this customer who's the hero in the journey. They come into conflict or challenge or problems that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to show that we have empathy and understanding for those problems, and we have authority in helping hundreds of physicians just like you. And then call to action. What's the next specific thing you want them to do?
Before I get into a few of my own opinions on video creation that I want to hear your feedback on, I want to ask, so let's go back to Chicago. You've identified a problem. And now just briefly, what's the plan of attack with the marketing strategy? Are you doing it on Facebook? Are you doing it on Instagram? Are you, what amount of time and money do you have to spend on SEO? Give us a little bit of a foundation of that, because I would imagine there are going to be people listening to this who are going to say, okay, I need to do this. Let's guide them as to what, the first steps are in that process.
So let's say that we got to Chicago and we started talking to realtors and we started going to local conventions and get-togethers with the real estate and mortgage community. And what we realized was the real challenge in the marketplace was to finance these high-rise condo buildings. Okay. But not only to finance these high-rise condo buildings, even deeper than that was the self-employed people who had had income disruptions due to COVID that still had high income and high net worth, but had inconsistent income over the last couple of years because of what's been going on with the economy. And the self-employed entrepreneurs were really having a hard time qualifying for the loans to get, the high-rise condo loans. Okay. So that's the area that I want to market to. So the first thing that I would do is I would figure out, okay, where do entrepreneurs moving to Chicago that want to buy high-rise buildings, where do they hang out? Where do they hang out online? Are there websites? Are there blogs? Are there places online where I can identify these people? I would want to have ads or articles. I would like to author articles would be the best thing that talk about those problems that those entrepreneurs are having in those high-rise condos and how we have solved for them here at Neo Home Loans, right? Just hypothetically. The other thing that I would do is there are list brokers all over the country, and list brokers will give you a list of self-employed people in a certain income category that live in a certain area. I mean, you can get really specific with those list brokers. You can then take those lists, you can snail mail to them, you could email to them, you can upload that database into Facebook and create a custom audience. And then I can put my videos and I can advertise just to those people. And of course, I would be talking about the challenges that entrepreneurs have, self-employed business owners have in qualifying, especially when they want to buy building in high rises and condos. And here's the 10 ways that we solve for those problems.
And what's going to get you the most bang for your buck in your current experience? I mean, snail mail is more expensive than Facebook advertising, but what has the best ROI?
Our custom audiences in Facebook with targeted videos using the formula of problem, empathy, authority, call to action. So that's kind of like what the video would talk about. And then leading to a landing page where the person puts in their information and asks for a consultation. That's been the biggest bang for the buck. We run roughly, $20 to $25 per opportunity, per client information that we get for consultation. With our Facebook advertising. If we do snail mail, we're considerably higher than that, but there are still opportunities in both. And I've found that sometime in concert, those things can work really well, like especially to past clients, right? Send out an email, I get 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 responses. I send out snail mail, I get 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 responses. I hit that same group with a video series and then send another postcard. And they're like, oh, freak, I meant to call the last time I saw this. Okay, now I'm going to call. So sometimes you just have to get to that person 3 or 4 or 5 times through different media. And finally they're like, okay, now's the time. This is a problem. I got to handle this.
Got it. Okay. So as mentioned, here's my take on video that I see. I don't see this with you, and you know that because we've talked about this. I think that you're really good on video. But as you said, you've logged a lot of hours. So it's not, I'm really glad that you debunked this myth that it's like you rolled out of the crib and all of a sudden you were good on video. I mean, that it's something that you needed to work at. But I feel like everything from people don't know how to frame themselves up in the shot. They're like this, you see them this far away and it's like, the guy doesn't even have his shirt tucked in. And I mean, it just, the visual is just aesthetically not attractive, to the fact that you can clearly see that they are scanning back and forth with their eyes because somehow they have some kind of a teleprompter, to the fact that they're too serious, to the fact that they're trying, most importantly, just to be too perfect. And it's where the words are coming from, in my view, it's probably 80%, if not 90% of the battle. It's like, it's not even all that important what you say. It's how you say it and your sincerity. And if you're speaking from your heart and if you sound authentic and you truly do have empathy. I mean, you're talking about like bringing empathy into the equation, but you have to, empathy is a feeling. It's not a word. It's not any script. It's who you're showing up as in that video. And I've, we showed some videos when you were in Costa Rica at the L360 signature retreat, of past people. And if you remember Dave Cooks, how beautiful it was. And he was like the least perfect but he got the most likes, the most comments because he was the most real.
Yeah.
And you could feel him. So those are some very strong opinions that I have. I'd be curious as to whether you agree with that or not.
I 100% agree. And I would just say that I still suffer from that affliction that I want to be perfect. You know, I want to be impactful. I want it to be meaningful. But that neurosis of worrying how perfect you are is counterproductive. You're diminishing your authenticity. You know, you talked about the distance between your head and your heart. If you can get into your heart and speak authentically, that has more impact and gravity and more influence than does any perfect script or how perfect you look. So it is moving into your heart. And one of the things that Rene Rodriguez teaches, I was just wondering if I had my heart rock here. It's at my home office. He gives us a little heart rock when we go through his class, but he teaches us to center ourselves in our heart before we deliver a message. And that as long as this is where the energy is coming from, as long as the story that we're telling is connected to our heart, then it's going to be really well received. And there's a whole process to that I don't want to give away his trade secrets, but it's exactly what you're saying. It is, if you can get authentic and you can get comfortable and you can just, think of one person that you want to help. That's another secret, Tim. One of the things that I learned early on was to create what's called an avatar. This is a guy named Frank Kern, who's an internet marketing sensation. And he says, create a customer avatar. That is one person that you can see you've helped. It could be a client that is a prototype of all the rest of the clients that you want to help. And when you're talking, just talk to that one person. I'm looking at the camera, but my message, it was almost like I was just holding up my phone, sending a text message video to that one person. And that kind of connection makes all the difference in the world in video.
Yeah, people want to work with people that they feel cared for by, and if they can't feel you, it doesn't really matter how good your scripting is or how handsome or beautiful you are. It's not going to work as effectively as if somebody feels the sincerity behind what you're sharing. I have one more business question, then I'm going to close with a personal question. So the business question is this: is that you're incredibly well scripted. We know that. We do this thing. You are the reigning champion, right? Is that correct?
Oh yeah, baby. I got it inscribed in everything.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if you hold on to the belt and come November. But we have this thing in the L360 program and the master's program. It's called Scriptapalooza, and we're blessed to have some of the best scripted people in the country and the mortgage industry in that group. And we have this little contest at every retreat. Josh is the current reigning script champion. Scripting is so important, man. Like, it's like the words that come out of your mouth are where you make your money. I mean, in addition to, of course, your marketing strategy, but marketing gets you the at bats, and scripting gets you the hits, as far as I'm concerned. So how did you become, is there any success strategies, any suggestions that you have for the listeners on how to get better at your delivery, at your scripting, et cetera? And I know that you coach a lot of, one of the goals that you had in your business plan when you went through the L360 program 3.5 years ago, or whatever it was to really mentor other people on your team and to help them as loan partners in their scripting, et cetera. So what are some of the things that you found? Let's take 5 minutes to discuss that, and then I'll hit you with a final question.
I think the most important thing for me has just been to be aware when something that I say has impact on the other person. And you can tell that that person was moved by the way that communication was crafted. And so to be aware of your impact and influence on the other person, that means you have to be present. If I'm thinking about what my next question is going to be, or if I'm thinking about the fact that I just got a Teams pop-up message over here, then it's impossible for me to be aware of the reaction from Tim. And I don't have to be on Zoom. I can just feel it over the phone. I can just, the conversation starts to evolve differently once you connect. And so I would simply just mentally, and sometimes I would just write down on my notepad, okay, that transition from asking questions to getting that person to be okay with filling out an application online, that transition works better if I say these words, right? So I'll just give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
Tim, based on what I heard you say, I think we're going to have a perfect solution for you and your family. And we're going to be able to overcome the obstacle of limited down payment, help you and your family avoid mortgage insurance, and also allow you to close on your new home before you start your job so that you can move seamlessly from California to Park City, and you won't have to worry about, being homeless or renting or anything like that. What I might suggest is we take the next step in the process, which will enable me to create for you what we call a total savings and wealth analysis. That total savings and wealth analysis is going to not only show you cost, but it's going to estimate for you the amount of wealth you and your family are going to build in real estate over the time horizon we talk that you're going to be in that house. And I think it's going to make your decision-making process on which of the mortgage options to go with ridiculously simple. So with your permission, I can text that link to you, or I can email it to you. If you'll take 10 minutes and complete our client questionnaire, then I'll be able to create that total savings and wealth analysis, and we'll jump back on the phone or on Zoom and we can review it together. Would you rather I text that or email it to you, Tim?
Text it to me.
Bam. And 99 times out of 100, when I would go through that scripting, I would go through a series of questions. I would take note on what are the hot buttons, what are the challenges this person might have with achieving financing. I would bring that up to their awareness. And then I would say, based on what I heard you say, I think we're going to have the perfect loan program, or potentially several options that are going to overcome these challenges. I recite those challenges that this person might have, and then I move them into the next piece. So it's just going through that process enough to realize and become aware when I say these words, it lands, and I have a great amount of influence for the person to do exactly what I need them to do to move down the sales funnel.
And I'll add to that, it again, notice the theme. Okay. We're talking about a guy who's successful because he steps back from the intensity and the distractions of the business and evaluates and analyzes his growth and improvement strategy. Okay. So it's a strategic approach to scripting. And what I would add is that, back in the day when I used to do loans, I would always evaluate by writing down what I refer to as my swings and misses. So like, okay, I didn't get that deal. Why? What did I not do that if I had done, I might have gotten them? And I would even take the time sometimes to ask the client, like, I respect the fact that you've chosen to go with somebody else and not me. May I ask you, why did you go? Why did you choose to go with them? And I would start to see patterns. Okay. Now think about how important this is. I mean, if you go from converting, 3 out of every 10 people you talk to 4 out of every 10 people you talk to, okay, think about how much more money you're going to make just by figuring out, as Josh was articulating, what needs to be inserted into your presentation process. It may be a line, a phrase, a sentence, a paragraph, but the constant evolution of our scripting is critically important to our success as originators. And then the other part of it is, frankly, is that you got to get a lot of at bats so you can practice it a lot. So if you don't have enough bats, then you need to crank up your marketing, because there's nothing that replaces opportunities to then further improve your conversion ratio as a result of being able to deliver the scripts and test and see what works. Let's finish up with a question. I want you to turn back the clock. You're 18 years old. Or if you could turn back the clock and talk to your 18-year-old self, with all the wisdom that you now have in your life as a man that's a third of the way home to being 120, what would you share with him, that 18-year-old version of you, about a decision that he made that you wish that he didn't make, and why?
What would I share with him about a decision that he made that he wished he didn't make? Did I hear that right?
That you wish that he didn't make. what coaching would you provide to him if you could turn back the clock? He's about to make a decision in his life. It's a critical moment. You have the wisdom now of a 40-something-year-old. I'm not sure of your age. I think you're about 45 or something like that. Is that how old you are, by the way?
43.
43. Sorry that I added 2 years, but you could afford it. You could afford it. You're going to live to be 120.
Rounding error.
Yeah, exactly. So you're 43 years old. If you could turn back the clock and talk to your 18-year-old self and provide some coaching on a decision that he was about to make sometime in the future, what would the advice be that you wish that he had the wisdom back then?
The first thing I thought of is, all the mistakes that I have made, I'm actually glad that I made them, because I think I've been able to learn through some painful experiences, some not so painful, but realizing that I'd made mistakes, that if you're going to live a long life, you're going to want to make those mistakes early when the stakes aren't as big as later in life. So I don't have any mistakes that came up to me like, what do I really regret? I think that even the time in my life when we had the Great Recession and the housing market crashed, and I was just, minutes away from bankruptcy and foreclosure, and by the grace of God, I narrowly escaped. Even going through that, the pain of that experience and the fear in that experience totally changed my real estate investment philosophy going forward. And I don't have to learn those lessons again. I got it, so I'm grateful for all those mistakes. But the thing that was coming up for me is, life is a really long game. And I remember, especially in my 18-year-old self, would feel that I needed to have instant success. And I needed to have, especially as it relates to investing early in my life, that I had to hit a home run. And in retrospect, now I realize that life is long and we have lots of time. It's very expansive. And all I had to do was just get on deck and stay in the game. I didn't have to necessarily win or hit a home run. I just had to get in the game and stay in the game. And so I think I would have a little more patience. I think I would feel a little less pressure to always have to, get it right or win. And I would enjoy the experience a little bit more, knowing how much time there is to learn to get it perfect or to win. And I'm sure that's a journey. In 20 years, I might be telling my 43-year-old self, but that's the first thing that came up for me.
Awesome. I mean, it kind of ties up everything really quite well. It goes back to, the subject matter that we were touching upon very early on, which was the blind spot of being so driven that sometimes we're not enjoying the ride as much as we're constantly focused on where we're wanting to go rather than being in this present moment. And I think that's great wisdom. And I think when you couple that with having a nice, solid strategic plan that you clearly have articulated throughout this interview, then you have much more of a balanced life. So, hey, man, I know that you've got a Facebook interview you got to jump on. You probably got to use the restroom. You probably want to, get a little something to drink. I want to let you go. And I want to say thank you so much for, and I'm sure that everybody else that's listening to this is grateful to you for really a great, great interview. And I really appreciate your time, brother.
My pleasure. It was an absolute blast. I appreciate it. Can't wait to listen to the rest of the recordings and interviews in your series.
Thanks, bro. Have a great day. Okay, man. See you soon.